Let me ask you something. Have you ever been hurt by someone so badly that it left you questioning your own worth? Maybe it was a partner, a parent, a friend, someone who manipulated you, blamed you, twisted everything until you felt like the crazy one. And here's the kicker. They never apologized. They acted like it was nothing, like you were the problem. But here's what no one tells you. Narcissists do feel something after they hurt you. They just won't ever admit it. And today, I'm going to rip the mask off and tell you the truth about what's really going on behind that fake confidence and cold indifference. Because once you understand what they secretly feel, you stop needing their apology, you stop waiting for closure, and you take back your power. Narcissists may appear cold, dismissive, or even proud after they've hurt you. But beneath that carefully crafted exterior is a feeling they work hard to hide. Shame. It's not that they don't feel anything. It's that what they do feel is so deeply uncomfortable that they'd rather shift the spotlight onto you than face it themselves. Shame for a narcissist isn't just unpleasant, it's intolerable. So instead of sitting with it, learning from it, or doing what emotionally mature people do, like owning up, apologizing, and growing, they bury it. And they bury it fast. But they don't just hide their shame, they weaponize it. They convert it into blame, projection, and deflection. Because if they can make you feel small, guilty, or uncertain, then they don't have to look inward. They don't have to ask hard questions like, why did I act that way? Or did I hurt someone I claim to care about? Instead, they twist the narrative. Suddenly, you're too sensitive. You're overreacting. You made them do it. That's not just gaslighting. It's a survival tactic. For them, accountability feels like annihilation, so they push it as far away as possible. This cycle is confusing, especially for empathetic people. You might try harder, thinking if you explain how you feel, they'll understand. But what you're up against isn't a lack of understanding. It's a refusal to engage with the truth. The shame they feel after hurting you is real, but because they can't admit fault without feeling like they're collapsing from the inside out, they transfer the weight onto you. That's why you walk away feeling drained, doubting yourself, and wondering what you did wrong, when in reality your only mistake was expecting honesty from someone who's at war with themselves. The inability to sit with shame doesn't make the harm they cause less real. It makes it more dangerous. Because they repeat the same behavior again and again, each time pushing the shame deeper and lashing out harder when it tries to surface. It's not that they never feel bad. It's that they'd rather destroy a relationship than admit they were the one who caused the damage. And once you understand that, you stop trying to win their empathy. You stop trying to fix what they won't face. Narcissists live in constant fear of being exposed. Not for a crime, not for a lie, but for the truth. That underneath the performance of confidence and controls a fragile sense of self built on insecurity and fear of inadequacy. When they hurt you, it's not just about the act itself, it's about making sure no one, especially you, can hold a mirror up to who they really are. That's why being wrong isn't just uncomfortable for them, it's terrifying. Being wrong means being vulnerable, and vulnerability is something they equate with weakness, failure, even humiliation. So what do they do instead? They deflect, deny, and rewrite reality. The moment they sense that you've seen behind the mask, even a little, they go into protection mode. They might gaslight you, rage at you, or stonewall you, not because you're wrong, but because you're dangerously close to the truth. To a narcissist, being exposed threatens their entire identity. They don't build their self-worth from the inside out like healthy people do. They construct it from the outside in, through praise, control, and carefully managing how others see them. You holding them accountable threatens that illusion. You showing emotion, asking questions, pointing out inconsistencies, that's not feedback to them, that's an attack. The irony is that they are often obsessed with how others perceive them, yet they lack the courage to face who they are when no one's watching. They'll go to great lengths to keep up appearances, to make sure others see them as successful, charming, in control. So when their behavior hurts you, they're far more concerned with managing the fallout than they are with understanding your pain. Their biggest fear isn't that you're upset, it's that you might tell others. It's that someone might see a crack in the image they've worked so hard to protect. And if they can silence you, confuse you, or discredit you, they think they've solved the problem. This is why apologies don't come easily from narcissists, because apologizing requires self-reflection, and self-reflection risks exposure. It means admitting that they failed to live up to the persona they've created. Even when they do offer what seems like an apology, it often comes wrapped in excuses or followed by a twist that turns the focus back on you. Because to them, protecting their image matters more than repairing the relationship. It's not about making amends. It's about making sure they remain untouchable, even at the cost of your trust, your dignity, or your peace understanding. This doesn't excuse the pain they cause, but it helps you see the game for what it is. It's not about logic, fairness, or accountability. It's about fear, deep, unacknowledged fear of being seen as ordinary, flawed, or worse, wrong. And once you realize that, you stop playing by their rules. Narcissists often present themselves as superior, confident, and emotionally detached, but underneath that facade lies a truth they'll never say out loud. They envy the very qualities in you that they try to tear down. They envy your emotional depth. They envy your ability to connect, to care, to feel, and to express vulnerability without shame. These are things they secretly crave but cannot access in a healthy way. So instead of admiring them, they try to control, ridicule, or destroy them. When you confront them about their behavior or express that they've hurt you, it triggers something they don't want to acknowledge. Your emotional honesty highlights everything they're disconnected from. They don't understand how you can be so open and still stand strong. They don't understand how you can feel so deeply and still choose kindness. That kind of integrity challenges them because they can't do it themselves. And rather than ask themselves why they're so emotionally blocked or how they can change, they turn their envy into mockery, contempt, or manipulation. It's easier to label you as too sensitive or dramatic than to admit they lack emotional courage. This envy plays out subtly but powerfully. If you're a caring person, they might accuse you of being weak. If you set boundaries, they might call you selfish. If you forgive them, they'll exploit it. But behind all of that is the quiet recognition that you have something they don't. A grounded sense of self that doesn't depend on control, performance, or constant validation. You don't need to dominate a room to feel valuable. You don't need to manipulate others to feel safe. And that, to a narcissist, is deeply threatening. They live in a constant state of comparison. They measure their worth by how much more attention, power, or admiration they can extract from others. But when they're around someone who is emotionally secure, someone who doesn't need to play games or seek approval, they feel exposed. It's like holding up a mirror to everything they're trying to avoid within themselves. So rather than learn from you or grow beside you, they often try to diminish you. They poke at your insecurities, they test your boundaries, and they make you question your instincts. But they do all this while secretly wondering how you remain so whole without all the tactics they rely on. This internal conflict, the simultaneous envy and dismissal of your strength, is what makes relationships with narcissists so emotionally exhausting. You're punished for your best qualities, ashamed for the very traits that make you human, empathetic and emotionally mature. And because they can't acknowledge the truth, they build an entire narrative in which they are always the one in control, the one who's right, the one who knows best. But deep down, they're watching you, not to admire, but to figure out how you do what they can't. This envy doesn't just stay between the two of you either. It bleeds into how they talk about you to others. They might downplay your successes, mock your emotional responses, or paint you as unstable, all to cover up the discomfort they feel in your presence. Because if others see what they see, that you are emotionally intelligent, resilient, and authentic, it threatens their illusion of superiority. And to a narcissist, protecting that illusion is everything. So while they may never admit it, your emotional strength unsettles them. They want it, but they don't know how to earn it. They resent you for having it, yet keep you close in hopes of absorbing some of it. But no matter how much they try to control or mimic what you have, they can't replicate something they won't work to understand. And that silent struggle between their admiration and their denial is something they'll never openly reveal. When a narcissist hurts you, there's a common misconception that they feel nothing at all, but the truth is more complicated. They do feel guilt, but it's not the kind that leads to growth, accountability, or change. Instead of genuine remorse, their guilt morphs into self-pity. Rather than thinking, I hurt someone I care about, they think, why is this happening to me? Their internal narrative is never about your pain. It's about their inconvenience, their discomfort, and how the consequences of their actions are affecting them. This form of guilt is deeply self-centered. It's not rooted in empathy, it's rooted in ego. They may feel bad, but only because they fear losing control, being judged, or damaging their image. If they sense that their behavior has pushed you away, their first instinct isn't to repair the relationship. It's to regain control over how they are perceived. That's why you'll often see narcissists playing the victim after they've done something wrong. They'll say things like, I can't believe you're doing this to me, or no one understands how hard things are for me. Suddenly, your pain is erased, and the spotlight is back on their suffering. This emotional reversal is intentional. If they make themselves the victim, they don't have to face the truth of what they've done. They can avoid the heavy emotional lifting of taking responsibility, and because they often lack emotional resilience, guilt becomes too overwhelming for them to process in a healthy way. So instead of sitting with it, they project it. They minimize your feelings, deny the facts, or shift the blame entirely. They may even convince themselves that you deserved the treatment you received, that you provoked them, that you're overly sensitive, or that you misunderstood their intentions. That's not remorse, that's damage control. Genuine guilt is uncomfortable but transformative. It leads people to apologize, reflect, and change. Narcissistic guilt doesn't do that. It stays stuck in the ego, where the focus remains on how the situation affects them, not how their actions affected you. And when guilt is filtered through self-pity, it becomes a tool for manipulation. They might cry, isolate themselves, or make dramatic statements, not out of sincere regret, but to reel you back in, to make you feel bad for calling them out, or to create confusion about who the real victim is. This kind of emotional bait can be deeply confusing, especially if you're a compassionate person. You might interpret their sadness as a breakthrough, a sign that they finally understand what they've done. But more often than not, it's a distraction. It's a way to avoid real accountability. Because at the end of the day, their guilt doesn't lead them toward you. It leads them back into themselves, where they're safe from change, safe from vulnerability, and safe from ever having to say the words you deserve to hear, I was wrong. When a narcissist goes silent after hurting you, it can feel like punishment, like a calculated withdrawal, designed to make you question everything, and in many ways it is. But beneath that silence, there's something deeper happening. It's not peace, and it's certainly not resolution. It's a defense mechanism. Silence becomes their shield, their power move, their way of avoiding the vulnerability that comes with confrontation, accountability, or even basic emotional presence. To the narcissist, engaging in a real conversation after they've caused harm is dangerous territory. It opens the door to emotions they don't want to deal with, your pain, your disappointment, and worst of all, your truth. So they shut down, disappear, or become cold and distant. Not because they're unaffected, but because they're trying to maintain control. Silence gives them the upper hand. It leaves you wondering, doubting, and reaching out. And if you do reach out, that just reinforces their belief that they have power over your emotions. This tactic is especially effective because it's subtle. Unlike yelling or obvious manipulation, silence masquerades as indifference. But it's not indifference, it's avoidance. Narcissists are often emotionally immature, and silence is their escape route from uncomfortable conversations. They use it to avoid taking responsibility or hearing about the impact of their behavior. If they can ignore the issue long enough, maybe you'll stop bringing it up. Maybe you'll blame yourself. Maybe you'll even apologize for how you reacted to their behavior. It's a form of emotional neglect that leaves you feeling invisible. It's not just the absence of words. It's the withdrawal of connection, acknowledgement, and validation. And over time, it chips away at your confidence. You begin to wonder if your feelings are even valid. You begin to internalize their silence as a reflection of your worth, when in reality, it's a reflection of their inability to deal with conflict in a healthy, mature way. Sometimes the silence is followed by a sudden return to normalcy, as if nothing ever happened. This is part of the cycle. The lack of closure keeps you off balance, always guessing, always hoping the next interaction will bring clarity. But with a narcissist, clarity is rarely given freely. Their silence is a tool to reset the dynamic on their terms, to erase the past without addressing it, and to reestablish their control without having to admit any wrongdoing. Understanding this changes how you respond. It reminds you that their silence is not a sign of peace. It's a refusal to engage with the emotional consequences of their actions. It's not strength, it's fear in disguise. And once you stop mistaking their silence for emotional power, you begin to reclaim your own voice, your own clarity, and your right to be heard. For a narcissist, relationships are not about emotional connection, they're about control. So when they hurt you, the question isn't whether they feel bad about it, it's whether admitting fault would cost them their power. Apologizing in their eyes means surrender. It means acknowledging that someone else's feelings matter, that someone else was right, and that they caused pain. And that's not something a narcissist is willing to do easily, because it disrupts the narrative they've built about themselves. The one where they're always in control, always justified, always the victim or the hero, but never the villain. This is why you may feel like you're constantly fighting for a simple, honest apology that never comes. Even when the evidence is clear, even when their actions have deeply hurt you, they deflect. They minimize, they change the subject, or worse, they make you apologize for how you reacted to their behavior. It's not just frustrating, it's emotionally exhausting. But it all ties back to one truth. For narcissists, maintaining control over the situation, the narrative, and your perception of them is more important than healing the damage they've done. To apologize sincerely, they would have to admit that they were wrong. And more than that, they'd have to be vulnerable. They would have to step out of their protected ego and into a space of empathy, accountability, and emotional risk. But vulnerability is something they associate with weakness. It exposes them. It makes them feel unsafe. So instead of taking that risk, they hold on to control with everything they have. That might mean gaslighting you, stonewalling, giving half-hearted sorry you feel that way responses, or flipping the script to make themselves the victim. Every one of these tactics serves the same purpose: to protect their ego and keep you off balance. What makes this dynamic even more painful is that narcissists often know they've hurt you. They're not always unaware, they're just unwilling. Unwilling to look at themselves honestly, unwilling to change, and unwilling to give up the control that comes from silence, denial, or manipulation. If you forgive too quickly, they take it as permission. If you ask for clarity, they accuse you of creating drama. And in doing so, they keep the upper hand, because the moment they truly apologize, they feel like they're giving something up: dominance, image, or emotional leverage. This is why many people stay stuck in cycles with narcissists, always waiting for the moment of recognition, the moment they finally see the damage they've done and choose connection over control. But with narcissists, that moment rarely comes. Because in their world, the need to protect their sense of superiority always wins over the need to repair the relationship. They may say some of the right words if it suits them, but a real apology, one rooted in empathy and followed by changed behavior, is something they simply won't give unless they see a personal benefit in doing so.